Today we're going to get these countertops turned over, we're going to get them grouted, we're going to get them sealed, and we're going to get them polished. Hi everybody, I'm Jim Dierdorf and this is Detroit DIY. Please reach down and hit the like and subscribe buttons. This is the last part of our mini-series countertop construction. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that it's given you the confidence to make your own countertops. So let's go. I got Brett Wimmer over and he helped me flip these countertops over, so we're going to get a good look at our finished product here, and how we're going to patch these air holes is what we're going to talk about today, the air pockets that got left behind. So let's have a look at them. So they turned out pretty good. A little sun today, which is nice. We don't get to see that a lot here in the great state of Michigan, especially during the winter. They turned out really nice. My white lines are nice, but I do have right here some air pockets that I have to deal with, and that's what we're going to work on today. So I am going to mix up some unsanded grout. This is a Portland-based grout. And we're just going to mix it up in a small Dixie cup. Get us a little bit in here. We don't need a bunch. Now I'm using a gray grout, but it's not quite as dark as the countertop. So I'm going to add a little bit of the colorant that I used in the cement to the grout, just to get the color a little bit darker. So I'm just going to get my skewer in here and get a little bit of this out. Just a few drops is all I need. I do want the grout to be darker than the countertop when I put it in, because it's going to dry lighter. And then just a little bit of water. And mix it up. Now I recommend that you let the grout just kind of sit for a few minutes after you mix it, so that it has a few minutes to temper, I guess is what they call it. So we just need to let it temper for a minute, and then we can start spreading it in there. With the amount of color that I put in it, it's probably almost black right now, which is good, because when it dries it will be a much lighter color. And I think I have it just a little bit too thin, so I'm going to add a little more powder to it. I got a little bit I spilled right here. I'm just going to scrape it in. I love using these skewers for mixing, and especially these little batches. You don't need a lot, and you don't want to throw a bunch away. Now I do have some little chips in the corners and stuff from prying the countertops loose. They're difficult to pry loose from the form. It gets a pretty good grip on them. The silicone holds it down pretty tight. So when you pry them loose, you may get a chip or two on the corner, and what I'm going to do is use some of the cement mix and just get the stones and whatnot out of it. So I just have the Portland and some sand, and I will fix them like that. Alright, that's better. I like that. So it's about like that. It's fairly thick, not quite pancake batter, not as thick as peanut butter, but somewhere in between those two. It is spreadable, it's going to be usable. I do recommend using rubber gloves so this doesn't happen. At this point in time, the countertops are stained easily because there's nothing protecting them. So anything that you, like if you drip a little bit of this colorant on the countertop, it's gonna grab a hold. You'll need to get it off right away with some water. And then when we do the final cleanup, we will have a better look at what it's actually going to look like. So I'm going to see if you guys can see these air pockets. So I'm just going to put some of this grout in here, a little bit, get it out on there. Take this spatula and just kind of spread it around. And you may have to do this a couple of times. And the reason I do it like this is I can fill them in a little flatter and air gets stuck in them. So you kind of have to work them a little bit to get the grout in them. So I don't really think that the air pockets take away from the overall of the countertop. They just add a little character. And I guess the nice part is the worst of these air pockets are near the back side of the counter where things will be sitting anyway. So they're not noticeable and it just adds some character. So I'm going to do this over this entire countertop, probably twice, and I'll be cleaning it up with a grout sponge after this haze is over, so that I can get all the residue off, or at least get it watered down so it'll come off better when I scrub it. And this grout will dry pretty firm, which is what we need because it is a Portland-based grout. So this is looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead, finish this whole thing up, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, I have the entire surface grouted. Now what I'm going to do is just go through with this spatula and scrape off any of the excess. Now I don't want to let this dry for too long before I get a sponge on it and start getting the remainder of it off. And then unfortunately what happens is it'll put a little indent in any of the air pockets, and then we'll just have to go over it again. I've also done the face, so I'll just go ahead and get any of the excess scraped off. Some of this you'll have to rub in with your fingers, especially for the smaller air pockets, but just get the excess scraped off. Then I am going to let it cure until it's a fairly consistent color. The entire top isn't full of air bubbles, but the reason I'm coating the entire top is to it's going to change the color a little bit, so I don't want a spotty color because I grouted this area and not that area. So it's just going to make the finished countertop a more consistent color. It'll still be pretty close to what it was when we started, once everything's done. So in the pouring of this one, I did notice some inconsistencies in how the cement mixed up. So this one was being the more difficult to work with than the other one. The other one, the cement kind of mixed up and stayed liquid a little longer. The other half here and has a lot less air bubbles in it. So no matter what, when you're doing the concrete countertops, air bubbles are going to be your biggest concern. And it's not that they're not fixable. The first countertop that I poured, there were so many air bubbles that just the amount of time it was going to take to try and correct them would have been more than just redoing it. So, and any way you look at it, the first set of countertops cost me $111, or this countertop the first time cost me $111. The second time I reused the form, and that's not including the form, but the second time the mix and the metal that I put in this form cost me about 86 bucks. So I'm about $190 into this countertop, even having to redo it, other than my time. And that's not bad. You're not going to buy a countertop, even a melamine countertop, for that kind of money. So it's no matter what, it's an inexpensive countertop. Yes, I would have liked to have hit it right the first time. And in a few weeks, I will be doing some countertops for my daughter's house, and we'll be highlighting a different product, I believe, for that job. So we're going to stick with some big box store items, and we're going to try and make some nice countertops with stuff that you can get right at the big box stores. So we'll see how that goes, and hopefully we can turn out a really nice product. So alright, what I'm going to do is I'm going to damp my sponge in some water here and start getting some of this haze off. I don't want a real wet sponge, just a damp sponge. And then I'm just going to bust the hazing up a little bit so that it doesn't get a grip on the cement. We'll do this several times, get all the hazing cleaned off before we put the second coat. Alright, so I'm going to get this finished up, and then we'll be back to get another coat on it and show you what it looks like. It's been about an hour now since I grouted, and I just kind of wanted to show you. I'm going to let this grout to finish dry in the air pockets, but it makes them really stand out, so it might be easier to see on video because they show up as the dark areas, so you can kind of see the magnitude of the air pockets that I'm dealing with on this particular piece. And like I say, it's not super bad, and you're always going to have these smaller ones. You're going to have some of them that you'll have to fill in. The bigger ones are going to take 2 or 3 coats. They're about half full now, so we'll get it coated again, and we'll come back when we're ready to give it a final cleanup. Okay, I'm ready for my third coat of grout, and I've got my grout mixed up here, and the bigger air pockets are probably 95% filled. But I do have some little ones here, and sometimes these require you to rub the grout in with your fingers. The spatula will not always fill them. And then to get these larger air pockets smooth, I'm going to show you what you need to do. So we're going to get spreading some grout here. And I'm just going to get a little bit out on here. And over these, where the section of the bigger air pockets were, I'm just going to spread the grout on there kind of liberal. And I'm going to leave it. I may have to come back through and get some of the little ones that were over here. But then I just want to take my fingers like this and rub the grout down into these smaller ones, because the air won't come out of them, so the grout won't go in when you're trying to use the spatula on them. So I found it best just to get some on here and kind of rub it around with your fingers, and it'll push it in there. And some of these are really small, but I really don't want any in the surface, so and I may have to do this a couple of times to get them all out. So I've really just been concentrating on the bigger air pockets at this point in time, and not so much these smaller ones. So they're filling right in as I'm doing this. I can see the grout going into them. So I just wanted to show you this in case you had some of these in the surface of your countertop and you were discovering you could not get the grout to go into them. It kind of has to be pushed in, and the best way I've noticed to do that is to rub it in with your fingers. So when we clean this up in the end here, all of this grout will, everything that's left on the surface will scrub right off. It comes off pretty easy. I have a bigger air pocket right there. And I noticed that the grout was drying a little bit lighter than the countertop itself. So I put just a little more color in it to get it a little bit darker than the first two batches. And I know these small air bubbles are hard to see on the camera, if not impossible. And they are very small. But it's just something that you wouldn't want in the surface of your countertop. So it dries pretty quick, or skims over pretty quick. So, and I did let the grout that was here dry for, it's been about 24 hours since I put the second coat on. So it's had plenty of time to harden, so I don't have to worry about any of that lifting during this process of getting this final coat on here. Now, I'll bring the camera over here in a minute, and maybe it'll be a little easier to see some of these, because some of the grout's already starting to dry a little bit over here, and the air bubbles are still wet, so they stand out a little better. It's also pretty easy to see them when you're putting the grout in. You can tell if they're filling or not. And some of them are stubborn. You just have to keep rubbing them with your fingers and rubbing to get the grout to go in. Like these are just refusing right here. So for this, I'm just going to go about halfway, and then I'm going to try and get a little bit of this excess off, and then kind of show you how I'm going to do that, especially for the larger air pockets. When you use the sponge, what happens is it causes a little indentation in the larger air pockets, so we want to try and avoid that. And I've kind of figured out a method so that they turn out nice and flat. In the beginning, I don't worry about it too much because I just want to get them filled in a little bit to get things moving, get them partially filled, and then it's easier to fill them completely in with a couple of applications of grout. I don't think you would be able to do it all at once, especially if you have some of these little ones like this that need to be worked into. Like I say, if there's any that you miss, they kind of stick out a little bit when this, and you can go back over and rub them in some more and fill them up. So any of them that you have on the edge, I've got a couple right here on this edge. I'm going to try and get you right in there on it. I'm going to take this and I'm going to just put the grout on just like that, and then I'll just trowel it this way. Both sides I'll trowel it and get that filled up, and then I'll leave the excess for a little while until it firms up. And then I'll scrape it with a razor blade so that it doesn't remove it from the area that I'm trying to fill in. And there's only a couple on the edge. The ones on the edge are probably the worst to fill in. But just like that. Now let's see if we can see. So if you can see these darker dots in here, I think we can. That is the small air pockets, and as you can see, some of them are very small, and they're starting to stand out. So would have been an air pocket right here. Any of the darker stuff would have been an air pocket. So I'm going to put a little more right there. A little more right there. Now I'm going to let this haze over, and then we'll come back and we'll get it cleaned up. So I'll see you in a few minutes. So I have the entire thing coated now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a razor knife, and I'm just going to scrape away the excess. And I'll just scrape this whole thing down and get all the excess off. And then I'll come back over it with a sponge, and I'll show you that right here in a minute. I'll get a little bit of this scraped away. back to about there. Then I'll show you what I'm going to do. Now, I may have to spot treat this in a couple of places one more time, but I will not have to do the whole thing again. So I'm going to do that over the entire surface. You can kind of see what that leaves you with. And then what the rest is just a dust, basically. And it comes loose pretty easy, but it is grout haze and it can get stuck to the surface. So all I'm going to do at this point in time is water it down a little bit. And I'm going to do that. See if we can get you a good view here. I'm going to do that with a grout applicator that has a sponge on it. It's a pretty firm sponge, and I'm going to get it wet, and then I'm just going to pull it over and kind of break the haze up. And then I'm going to let that dry overnight or for 24 hours. And anywhere where it's really dark, I kind of want to rub it a little bit, because that'll be what's hard to get off. So I'm just going to give it a nice little rub. I'm going to wet this down again. And you'll be able to see where the haze is the heaviest, and you can just rub it a little bit extra. You'll see the darker color when you start rubbing it. Let's see. I don't know how well, but you can see the air pockets where they were, and they're now filled. And of course the white line, all that'll clean up. It'll look just like it did before I did anything, only be devoid of any air pockets. And there may be a couple little ones. Like I say, I might go back and just touch a spot or two and fill some others up. But that's basically how you get rid of your surface imperfections. And then you're going to let that dry for 24 hours. And then tomorrow we will come back and give it a good clean up. And I'll see you then. The grout has been drying now for about 24 hours. So I'm going to go ahead and get this cleaned up, and we're going to start with a grouting sponge, a nice wet sponge, just to get the entire surface moistened. And we're going to clean it like this until we're lifting no more black off of it. So I've got a couple of buckets of water here that are going to assist me in doing this. Then the countertop is going to clean up pretty good with just the water, but we're going to go over it with the sponge first and get it all off. I have a couple of buckets of water here because we're probably going to go through a couple. So I want to get it good and hydrated where it'll actually stay wet. This kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what it will look like when it is sealed and polished. It'll be a little bit lighter than this. So when I poured this, I put some vegetable oil on the form for a non-stick agent. They say you don't need to put anything, but I opted to use a little vegetable oil. So I've done nothing to take care of that or to make sure that that is off the surface. So that's what I'm going to do now. And I'm going to use some soapy water To do that, I'm just going to coat it down real good with a soapy water. And then I'm going to use some double-aught steel wool to just kind of give it a good scouring. And this will also help to remove any of the glazing left behind from the grout. Any surface imperfections, just give it a good clean up. And I may do this a couple of times, just see what it looks like when I sponge it off. Okay, I'm going to get this sponged off and we'll do it again. Alright, and there we have it. That's what you need to do to get it cleaned up. If I see anything in the surface that I'm not happy with, once I'm done getting all the soap residue off, I'll do any touch-up grout that I need to do, and I will use some 220 sandpaper if need be to smooth out any areas that I'm not happy with, or to get a little bit of a color blend in places. So we'll be back when we're ready to seal and put the polish on, and we'll see you then. The grouting is finished and I'm ready to seal them now. It's been about 20 days, I guess, somewhere in that neighborhood. And the sealer I'm going to be using I got from Z Counterform, and it is called Acrylic 14. It's the reason I selected this sealer is because it has properties in it that won't be affected by vinegar or lemon juice or anything like that. So it's a better sealer for the countertop. And then there's a polish that'll go right over the top of it. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use a little roller. I bought the best little roller pad for it that I could. There's no linting, and a little bit goes a long way. I've already sealed the others. I'm going to put 4 coats, about 1 coat every hour. Then I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to put the polish on. So let's get started. And it does go pretty quick, so it takes very little. This sealer also will not darken the surface like some other sealers might. It'll darken it a little bit, but not very much. So we're just going to start spreading it out on here. We got a lot going on. This one soaking of the roller may be enough to do this whole thing. Now it looks like it's darkening it up a lot, but when it dries, it will not be this dark. And this has a low luster to it. And you don't have to do anything else after this 4 coats if you don't want to. If you don't want a super shiny countertop, you don't have to do anything else after this. So I'm going to roll this in multiple directions and just get it to soak in the best that I can. And when it's all said and done, I'm going to do a review on this product also. It's been on the other countertops in the house for a few weeks now. So I got a good idea how it's going to hold up. And as you can see, just one dip of the roller in the sealer was more than enough to do what I need. But if I just keep rolling it, it'll pull it in. Now I don't have to worry about sealing this side because this is going to be against the wall. But I am going to have to seal the face also. So all I want to do is just try and keep everything wet and keep moving it around, and it'll just pull it in. And then when we put the second coat, I'll film that also so that you can see the shine, and then how well it pulls in the second coat as well. This is a water-based sealer, so the cleanup of the roller is easy. I can use this roller over and over, which is nice. And I'm going to go ahead and do the face. I noticed that the roller likes to skid a little bit when you first start instead of roll. Everything gets a little bit slippery. And these little bubbles that are showing, they'll disappear as it dries. I'm probably going to hit this again both directions one time and then move on to the other one. As you can see, there's no more puddling. It soaked it up really nice. But you don't want to leave any puddling either. So if you did have puddling, you'd want to take a cloth or something and squeeze a little excess out of your roller. And get the puddles off. Alright, this is looking pretty good. It's been an hour now, and the sealer is dry. It's dry to the touch, and as you can see, it has picked up a little bit of a sheen, and it's definitely a lot smoother to the touch. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get this second coat on, and you'll see that the second coat also penetrates the surface of the cement, because you'll see it get dark again, and then it'll lighten back up. So, and that's what I mean too, is it doesn't really darken the surface of the countertop, so you pretty much get what you had. There's a very slight amount of darkening with this sealer. So let's go ahead and get the second coat started. And this is kind of what I wanted you to see, is how it absorbs it into the surface, and you'll see it, the face of the cement here darken up again from it soaking in. So I kind of like that about it, because it's definitely getting into the cement and not just sitting on top, which is kind of what we want. We really don't want a surface sealer, in my opinion. I want a penetrating sealer, and this seems to be a good one for that. So you can already see how it's darkening up and pulling this into the cement rather than just another coat on top of what was there. It's pulling it in. And the second coat also, you need very little sealer for the second coat. The third and the fourth are about the same. I do recommend 4 coats, just for the ultimate amount of protection. I suppose you could put more if you wanted to, but I don't know that you would benefit any more from it or not. So there we go. I'm going to get the other side done and the face is done. I'll get 2 more coats on, and then we're going to get the polish on here. Let these things dry for a few days, and then I'm going to get them in the house, get them installed. So we'll be back and we'll get the polish on. I have 4 coats of sealer on here now, and I let it dry. Now we're going to go ahead and get the polish on, and what I'm going to use is also from Z Counterforms, and it is countertop polish. As you can see, the countertops have a low sheen to them. Let's see if we can get you to see it a little better. They have a low sheen. They're very smooth. And this would be sufficient if this is the sheen that you desired. However, I would like to get a high gloss on them. So I'm going to use this shine, and it goes on the same way as the sealer. I'm going to put 4 coats on, the same as the sealer, about an hour apart. So I've already shaken this up, and this has done all the countertops, this little 1-quart container, and it's still half full. So this stuff goes a long way. The nice thing about this is it can be reapplied at any time. So if there's an issue at any time with the countertop over its life, or every year, whatever you want to do, you can recoat it with polish again, or the shine, and get your gloss back and get everything back if you lose it. I'm not sure how long it lasts, but I like the fact that you could go over it at any time you wanted to. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to coat it in several directions. Doesn't take a lot, about an hour between each coat, and we'll be good. Then I'm going to let these cure for about 4 days right here before I install them. And then I noticed with the other ones that it really took about 2 weeks after they were done. But the other ones did get some water on them, and it looked like it soaked in at first, but it dried right off and didn't leave a spot. So far I'm really happy with this sealer and this polish. And I think Z Counterforms has been around for a long time, so I would believe that they have quality products, and all their reviews look really good. So I was happy to find them. So this is all we're going to do. I'm going to get this one and get the other one and get 4 coats on it. And when we get ready to install, you'll see this nice gloss on them. So that's all there is to it. Just roll it on, keep spreading it around till it lays out nice. Put 4 coats on, one about every hour, and let it cure for a little while and you're good to go. So we'll be back when we get these installed. I would like to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed yourself. And if you did, click on one of these 2 videos that are going to pop up right here and keep on watching. I'd like to give a special thanks to Tony Iconelli and Brett Wimmer. I couldn't do any of this without